How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Administrative Committee this afternoon, today, Monday, September 23rd. And first thing on the agenda is the approval of the meetings from August 26th. Any concerns about the minutes?
I don't have any concerns.
Nope, either.
Okay. Next on the agenda is Tim Davis with the Second Amendment to the Franchise Agreement Exhibit G.
Good afternoon. It's Mike. We're right.
It's a snappy title you wrote there.
So before you today is an amendment to the Solid Waste Franchise Agreement Exhibit G. Exhibit G contains the fees paid to Inland North Waste for solid waste services performed according to the Solid Waste Franchise Agreement. Each fiscal year, Exhibit G is adjusted upward or downward to reflect changes in the cost of operations based on the annual fluctuations to the Consumer Price Index. The Consumer Price Index adjustments for FY 2025 is 3.82%. And this fee adjustment will become effective on October 1, 2024, if approved. Following the most recent franchise agreement amendment this past summer, it was decided to formally amend the agreement in the future for this annual adjustment in order to capture and record both parties' consent to these fee changes. That's really all I have, unless you guys have any questions.
I know in the past it's been a little bit harder to come to an understanding of what, how those fluctuations are going to happen. And so now we have solidified that in just reflecting the CPI, right? There's a separate one for fuel anymore, or is there still one for fuel?
There's still a fuel index,
Okay.
and we've had the CPI adjustment in the agreement for many, many years.
Mhm.
They were just requesting some additional increases beyond the CPI adjustment.
Oh, right.
So that's what we experienced here a couple of years ago. But the fuel relief still remains in the agreement.
Okay, so that's just a separate category and that's not part of the CPI.
We do use the CPI to compute the fuel relief. However, I don't believe we've had to pay any fuel relief for the past 5 or 6 months, maybe, because it's fallen within that range
Oh, okay,
where it's just a zero net.
okay.
Fuel has come down enough
Mhm.
that I think there's a 30% range there that we don't have to apply it if it falls within that.
And that number didn't come as a surprise, that what the 3.8, is that what that is?
3.82. No.
Great.
Much better than the over 8% we
Yeah.
had last
Yeah.
I was gonna say this
Right.
is, I thought it was like a 4% drop that we're seeing, right?
Mhm.
All right.
All right.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Any questions? Any other questions?
I think we could, I feel comfortable putting
I
on
do too.
consent agenda.
Yep.
So,
All right, let's put that on consent.
Very well. Thank you.
thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. Next on the agenda is professional services agreement between the City of Moscow and Presnell Gage with Sarah Decker.
Hi there.
Hello.
So in June of 2024, the city of Moscow issued a request for move my chair. A request for qualifications, or an RFQ, for from certified public accounting firms to audit our respective financial statements for fiscal year ending September 30, 2024, with the option to audit the 4 subsequent fiscal years. The firms had to address the requirements of the RFQ and submit a sealed proposal to include the pricing for the 5 fiscal years. Upon the closing of the RFQ, we received one proposal, which was from Presnell Gage. We reviewed the proposal and deemed that it met all the qualifications. And so we prepared a professional services agreement between the city and Presnell Gage. And we are requesting that you either recommend approval or provide further direction for us.
Any ideas on why it was only one that responded?
I really don't know. I have heard that, I mean, we only have so many local
Yeah.
firms, even though we did reach out to Spokane and even Seattle. But I have heard that a lot of firms just really aren't taking on much more.
Oh.
And those agencies around us who have submitted have not really received many responses either.
We haven't had any issues, I don't think, with Presnell Gage at all. It seems like
Nope,
they've been
we've
solid.
been satisfied with their services. Like Sarah mentioned, we've been with them for many years, but we did feel it was appropriate for us to go back out and advertise.
Yeah.
Provide other firms the opportunity. They were the only ones that submitted. So.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm glad someone did.
I agree.
I didn't have any questions. Pretty straightforward to me. So
Let's
Alright.
let's do it.
Place this on consent then?
Yeah.
All right.
Not that it's not riveting, but you know.
Right. Yes, I understand.
All right, next on the agenda is the City of Moscow Utility Billing Policy Update, again with Sarah.
Yes. As you are aware, in accordance with Moscow City Code, property owners are responsible for the cost of utility services delivered to properties regardless of the user of the utility being provided. The City of Moscow has always provided the convenience of billing tenants on the owner's behalf. But on February 16th, 2021, we formalized a utility billing process through Resolution 2021-01 by adopting the City of Moscow Utility Billing Policy, Utility Billing Application, and Utility Billing Directive. On August 19th, 2024, the Idaho Supreme Court issued a decision that confirmed the city's ability to hold property owners responsible for services provided to their property, but they found that the city did not provide enough detail within the utility billing application regarding the means by which the city could pursue to collect unpaid balances by use of liens. So this decision necessitates an amendment to our utility billing policy, our application, and our tenant billing directive to continue to provide convenience to tenants for billing on behalf of the property owner. So we are requesting that you approve or provide us with direction.
I mean, so largely the court affirmed the city's ability for property owners to be held responsible for tenants' consumption utilities by contract. It's for those that were there during oral arguments before the Supreme Court, they really kind of fixated on the fact that we listed liens as one of the ways that we may be able to collect unpaid utility bills. Even though we've never utilized liens for that purpose, it was just placed in the list. The justices were really focused on whether that was a prejudgment lien, that meaning a lien that we try to enforce prior to receiving a court order that we could collect it by a lien, or whether it be a post-judgment lien. And that ambiguity, essentially, they really kind of focused on as lending the agreements as being unenforceable because of them being ambiguous. All of the major salient points that were of a concern to us, which is our ability to get paid for the services we provide to properties, were upheld and affirmed by the court. So we just essentially have removed reference to lien and just say all legal means. And so that does include taking to small claims court. And if the court were to approve placing of a lien on property, that would be one of the means. We just didn't call it out as a specific. It was a bit unusual that they fixated on that one word. And just because we didn't spell out the method by which we would try to obtain a lien, obviously it would be by any legally permissible means. We wouldn't be using a mechanics lien. We wouldn't be using other types of liens. That seemed to be the one thing that the court did focus on. So this only affects 900 or so of our 6,000 accounts. Where we have utility and billing directives, and we will just institute new forms and transition those out as people move in, move out, and get everybody who is wanting us to bill their tenants on their behalf to get new agreements in place.
And I'm assuming this doesn't hurt. I'm sorry, Julia.
No, go ahead.
This doesn't, it doesn't make it harder for those property owners. at all.
Doesn't change a
Just-
thing
just
for the
making sure.
process.
Okay.
And the other thing the court held, and so there's some language was added to the agreements for severability. That is, if any one of the terms or conditions are deemed to be invalid, it does not invalidate the entire agreement. That was the other thing. We didn't make an argument for severability on just that one lien provision, because essentially it's a paragraph. It's not a very expansive contract or agreement. But we have added that just in case there is in some other case, something is deemed to be inappropriate, that the remainder of the agreement remain in place.
Okay, so, and this is going to go forward on a rolling process as people get the new agreement. We don't have to like
Mm-mm.
switch everybody's.
Correct. In what we're just going to probably there'll be a date by which we'll want to make sure we get all of them updated. We've talked about going through the winter, move in, move out, and then the summer. A lot of the accounts naturally transition back to owner during summer when they're vacant, and so it could be that we set a deadline by August. Essentially, everybody has to have the new billing directive in place in order to get everything squared away.
And we are making sure to work directly with the property owners and rental agencies. So they start everything around January. And so that's the beginning of their process. We're going to make sure that they have the forms and just make sure that we're able to hit all of their times of move in and move out, because it does vary
Yeah.
Depending on the properties. But we're going to make it as easy and as possible to transition.
And it doesn't change any of the terms and conditions with them. All it does is remove the word lien from it. So,
All right.
No lien.
No
Okay,
lien.
no lien.
well,
Unless-
all
unless-
legally permissible
Not
methods, but we've never had to do
Correct.
that. And we don't anticipate
Yeah.
utilizing
Yeah.
that. So
And this can go on consent? Is that?
it can. It's a resolution, so it can go on consent.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm
Okay,
fine with that.
Yep, consent sounds good to me.
all right.
All right.
Place
Thank
that
Thanks,
on
Sarah.
consent. All right, next on our agenda is Idaho Outdoor Recreation Fund grant application with Alyssa. Hi. Alyssa Anderson. Sorry, I got to Scott Bontrager
like-
and then I was like, oh, where's Scott?
My partner in crime is out today. So I did a quick little PowerPoint for this, and I'll just say before we start, I'm not the best at doing PowerPoints, but I can tell I need some updating here. But so the Idaho Outdoor Recreation Fund application, which was included in the packet that you got, we got a grant, or I mean an email regarding that program early last week. And so, or I think it was the Friday before maybe, but we started moving forward, like, do we have something for this? And I did email the gal that manages the program and asked if this was a fit, because I wasn't sure. And she came back and she said that all applications are being accepted. So I think it's worth a try. Now you'll see how my PowerPoint skills were not up to date. I saved one that Mike had used to reuse it, but I didn't realize that it was animated. And so some of my lines are coming up not in the correct order.
It's all right.
It's
Anyhow.
okay.
So the legislature granted the Idaho Department of Parks and Rec, along with this Outdoor Recreation Advisory Council, $5 million through legislation to open up opportunities for capital projects to expand recreation. And so for us, we looked at the line where it said projects that create new access to parks. The application date is 9/30. We took that into consideration. ARPA funds, so it has to be obligated quickly, which we know by the end of this year. We'd have to have a construction contract in place. And then we do have 2 years to complete the project, but that we would want to move forward in the spring of 25. So I met with Scott, and we had previously had a project that was included in a grant. If you remember the Mountain View Park Idaho Community Development Block Grant, we ended up having to remove the connector path from that project. We had, we put it out to bid 3 times, and the pathway was really overpriced for what we knew we could do. So we got Department of Commerce approval to remove it. Hopefully we could do it later. So we had that in design already. There's been an environmental done on it. So we're going to use that as our one of the projects to submit for this. It provides the ADA access that we need in between the parking lots. And this is an old design that we had from when Nate was here, but what it does is it just provides that connection, and then it hooks also onto the basketball courts there. And so, ADA access between the 2 parking lots to Paradise Path, to the playground and the picnic area. And then our second one, this has been in the CIP previously, but it's the connection between Anderson Frontier Park and Anderson 7th Edition. And the developer put the connection to the edge of the park when they finished up, I think it's Claddy Court. But then this section of the pathway will provide the connection to the pathway into the park. And so this is like you can barely see how the line would go. And this isn't a fully developed one, but it provides the additional connection to the existing pathway. But this is the only picture I could find this afternoon, and no one was in the building. So what it does is it goes from the subdivision into the interior part of the path where the existing path is there in the park. And that was also in the CIP. So these are the two projects. Scott and I worked on to make sure that we could cover everything. Match isn't required, but we are going to offer that our in-kind design and construction management, if awarded, would be included. So we're asking today to submit an application not to exceed $160,000. The applications will be due, on the end of the month. And so we're just going, we have a pretty good amount of information already available. Public outreach for the Anderson Frontier. There was discussion regarding that path when they looked at the plat again in 2022 for 7th edition. So I did go back through the notes of the program, and they had talked about there wasn't enough outreach done for North Central and North Idaho when they did this program last year, and they only had applicants that were from the southern part of the state. And so I thought, well, let's try it.
Yeah.
So
Are these projects, since we had trouble getting them bidded in the past, is it something that we can do in-house, or are we going to just send them out to bid again?
They'll go out to bid. We are not really well equipped to do large scale concrete flat work. We could do prep work, we could do other things, but it's not likely something we would self-perform. So we would try to see if there was a contractor that'd be available to do it. And we would have to get these obligated under a contract by the end of the year and expended by 26.
yes, and we do have a few folks that have came forth and wanted to start doing our concrete work.
Oh.
One that's doing the pathway now, and then another contractor we know that's available. So I think the access and having them have the opportunity to bid it in the fall and then do the work next year, we're hoping that we can. And prices seem to be adjusting to now, and they're not as expensive. So
Okay.
Cool.
It would be, I guess, a lesser mix of trades involved. It's all going to be kind of flat work pathway. It won't be setting buildings or utility constructions or electrical work. And
Mixed
so,
construction.
yeah, it'd make it probably a more attractive project for certain contractors.
Nice. I
Okay.
love the path of Mountain View. That would be great.
And I always appreciate how you have your, how you have this network, how you can able to focus and bring stuff into the city. It's always super helpful. And so I'm all for it.
Me
Put it on
too.
consent agenda, and I don't know, Julia, your thoughts, but consent sounds good to me.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
I hope,
Great.
good luck.
thank you.
Yeah.
We'd all be very
It's a
grateful for
short
your
term.
grant
We are-
writing
yeah.
skills.
Talented skill.
Next on the agenda is the West Palouse River Drive Site Study Agreement
Oh,
with
yeah.
Bill Belknap.
That's smaller.
Just thought I'd have a map to show here. So a little bit of background on this one. As we've discussed previously, the school district does anticipate or has a desire to construct a new elementary school sometime in the near future. The city and the district have had discussions about the city's property on West Palouse River Drive that was initially acquired for athletic playfields. Ended up having a fairly high development cost associated with it because it had a bridge and a road and other improvements that were necessary. We then went back and worked with the district to develop some playfields on the Joseph Street property. And we've kind of had this property really ever since sitting a little bit idle. So we've been talking about whether we could have some form of joint development on the property that would be to house a new elementary school as well as some additional athletic playfields and park facilities. Earlier this year, the city and the district entered into a memorandum of understanding to jointly fund a planning study to assess the feasibility of the joint development of the property for those two uses. We were kind of waiting for the district to go through a recent procurement process for design professional services. So they went through and I think they've selected a number of firms to provide the district with a variety of architectural services. We thought it'd be beneficial to select a firm that the district had selected should that project move forward in a future phase, to have that kind of the foundation already in place for that design effort. So LCA Architects was one of the firms selected by the district. So we worked with them to develop a scope of work for this planning level assessment on the property for this site study. And that scope has been reviewed and approved by the school district staff. So just kind of familiarize council with the property. This is the property there located as kind of a Idaho shape tipped on its side with a panhandle out there to the west.
Naturally, right.
Yep. So it's just a little over almost, I think, a 43 acre parcel in total size. This actually shows a little bit more of kind of the finished current condition with Eddington construction that was happening. So obviously the grading, mass grading was occurring at the time of this photo, but the extension of Conestoga and the bridge and access was not in place. So, sorry, wrong button. So this is really kind of that finished property we have. The Conestoga, which is the primary access to the property, comes off on the east side down from West Cliffs River Drive. And there'll be a secondary point of access then on the west end through kind of the panhandle connecting again to West Cliffs River Drive. And so the area that we're really focusing on will be that area that's south of the South Fork of the Palouse River. I would anticipate school will be probably somewhere down here in that southeast corner. It gets at the furthest away from the floodplain, from any flooding impacts. Athletic play fields and park facilities are good floodplain uses to provide that natural function. But that's what we would anticipate. The school will be primarily focused on where the primary means of access is and in locations farthest away from any potential flooding impacts. Base fee for the agreement is $34,000 plus $2,000 in reimbursable expenses. In that $34,000 is a $10,000 reservation for any type of civil engineering that we might need. This is largely kind of a schematic site planning exercise, but there could be some civil questions that we'd like to have answered related to utilities or maybe cost estimation of roadway or other improvements. And so we're really kind of starting off with this $24,000 base scope of work with a couple thousand in reimbursable expenses, but there's that $10,000 reservation that as we get through that conceptual design, if there are any questions that we think we need to have answered by a civil engineer that our staff cannot provide, we have that budget that's available for use, but only upon the city's approval for use of those funds. It would, again, be exploratory study, doesn't bind the city or the district to anything. It's really just walking through the process of, does this work for both entities? And do we get enough athletic fields out of it to make it make sense for us? Does the site flow well and work well for the district for student circulation, drop off, pickup? They are hoping to, I think, to site a school somewhere other than the north or the east side of town, which is where the kind of what may be in the future, the two remaining elementary schools will be located on the east side of town. So I'd like to have kind of a better spatial distribution of schools. But really it's for us to take a look at it and see whether we think this works for both entities. So we would expect at least $13,000 of expenses out of our parks capital accumulation, and then could be up to $18,000 if we were to exhaust the $10,000 in civil engineering reserve. So that'd be the range of what we'd be seeing. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
So does this also include studies with potential growth on the Sand Road, Palouse River Drive? Because that could really, it seems like that has the potential to really expand and have a lot of development that might not be great for an elementary school.
So we have a different scope of work that we are currently developing with Great West Engineers. So as you may recall, Whitman County is looking at potentially trying to create somewhat of a south bypass that would connect not US 95 with US 195 using Sand Road as the primary means. Whitman County was interested in pursuing a raised grant last year to help fund at least the engineering study portion of that work. We wanted to be a part of that because we didn't want Whitman County to improve their corridor to our doorstep, but then us to have to deal with the remaining traffic and some of our undeveloped frontage and lack of pedestrian or bike facilities on the corridor. So we have worked with Whitman County to partner in their grant application. So they anticipate making that grant application in the spring of next year. So we needed to do a preliminary assessment of what would be the corridor improvements that we would like to see happen should we anticipate to see higher traffic volumes. Now that would be concentrated predominantly on West Palouse River Drive. The school itself would come off Conestoga, so we wouldn't have any direct impacts there. And it's not common that we have arterials that serve as kind of primary means to access, and then we kind of on a collector as a secondary means to the school site. But we might want to take a look at obviously at pedestrian crossing facilities at Palouse River Drive as we look to the future. So we have kind of a separate scope of working with Great West to do a preliminary corridor assessment and a cost estimation of what improvements would look like that we could then fold into the grant application that Whitman County is submitting. We also have North Laidlaw County Highway District doing an assessment of their portion because there's a portion of that's in the city, clearly, then a little bit of highway district till you get the state line, and then it's in Whitman County. So the three entities are working together to put together a unified grant application for the RAISE grant. So we could get a completely improved corridor all the way from 95 to 195. That does include some assessment of queuing capacity at the 95 and Palouse River Drive intersection, as well as making sure we fill in those frontage gaps for bike facilities, bike lanes, and pedestrian facilities on the corridor.
And I'm assuming, I probably shouldn't, but the school district is aware of all of
There.
that. Okay.
Yep.
Great,
And
thank you.
as always, we're going to run into, then it's a highway, then it's a state highway, and the Palouse River Drive, and how are they going to coordinate? I just envision that development in that area being significant, and then we always get stuck when it gets to the state roads.
Yep, you'll get state highway, and at that point, then you have safety busing that occurs because it's not potentially a safe crossing of students. So, at least we can serve everything up to the Anderson Frontier Edition of the hill to the north, and then this development here to the south. But we do have the highways that kind of cut us into 4 quadrants, and you're always going whenever you cite a school on one of those sides. And I think right now, students that live in Anderson Frontier and everything will have no school, obviously, to get to in any means. So if you could actually cite one here, then it would be walkable for that quadrant of town. And then if you do have students, and I don't know how they're going to do districting in the future, that'll be a school district decision as far as deciding what schools students attend. But they certainly have safety busing zones. If there are roadways like US 95, they're unsafe for students to cross, that they will provide transportation.
That's a good point. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Bill, from a city perspective, we're looking at it from ball fields. Are we leaving it open to preliminary design to suggest what type of ball fields those are? Or are we saying X amount of types of ball fields?
So we'll engage with the recreation department to try to help identify what they feel are the highest needs. And so the conversation had been recently that there's a need for more baseball facilities, but baseball facilities have a relatively large footprint. There is the possibility of converting one of the existing fields at Joseph to baseball, and then we could then try to focus on kind of the little league softball fields on this site that are be easier for us to accommodate on location. You start putting the baseball with the outfields, the distance they are, it can be a little bit, has a pretty good sized footprint. We've also talked to the district about their openness to a 2-story elementary school to try to preserve land, and they're open to the concept. Think it would work well on the site. I wanted to make sure that was something they'd be open to exploring because there are some economies of construction cost and site space that could accommodate. And so we'll kind of work through that process as we kind of work through the prototypical schools and sited on the property. So really we'll kind of lean to the rec department to see where they see the greatest demand for what type of fields and how can we kind of utilize existing locations to best meet those needs.
That's great.
You know what you really need there is a cross-country course.
And, everything north
Leave
of
it around there.
yeah, it's a
Perfect.
nice site. And, just like we've had the walking path around Joseph, I mean, those types of recreational pathways will be
That's
a great amenity to the property. And then we have everything north of the river as well for all kinds of different types of, I'm sure David has lots of ideas of park development opportunities on the north side where we currently have cyclocross and, there may be other uses that will come forward in the future.
Cool.
I just want to get my plug in there.
Well done.
Get a nice
Sure.
soft wood chip path.
Yeah.
Oh,
That'd
that
be
gives me
great.
splinters just
Beautiful.
thinking of it.
We don't have any, we don't have a cross-country course in Moscow.
We
And
don't?
so there's no,
I've
there's
covered
no home
sports for
meet.
20 years, and I've never had a place that had a cross-country course. They use golf courses.
Lewiston.
Lewiston,
Yeah,
Boise
yeah.
does.
Didn't cover things in Boise.
All right. Anyway, sorry. Consent? Are we doing this in front of everybody? What do you want to do?
I don't care.
I think it's up to the committee's preference.
What's on
I
the
think it's
agenda?
kind of high stakes and we should probably do it in front of everybody.
Yeah,
Happy to do that.
we don't have a huge agenda anyway, right?
We'll have two public hearings
Okay.
that weren't here before. So there's going to be an annexation, I believe. There's an annexation rezone for a
Okay.
subdivision. And then we have another approval of a final PUD, final plat. That was the Wild Rose Court that we delayed one meeting cycle because Mike was not
Oh,
going to
right.
be available at the last meeting. So we'll have a couple items, but they shouldn't be too bad.
Okay, yeah, I think we should put this on regular.
That'd be great.
That's for the 7th, correct? 7th, I think.
7th, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Anything else?
That's it from staff today.
All right,
You guys?
good.
Good, thank you.
All right.
Enjoy your fifth Monday
Let's
this
adjourn.
month.
Thank